Hello, I'm Thomas Marsh, and I'd like to make a continuation of a basic drawing lecture which I started by showing how to draw a cylinder in perspective in line only. Today, we're going to look at how to make that cylinder look more realistic with light and shadow. The basic materials which you could have at home are sufficient for a project like this. Now, I do have a traditional artist's drawing board here and the giant clipboard which we hold a big drawing pad with, but you could use a piece of computer paper and the simplest number 2 pencil with an eraser on it. That would suffice. What I'm going to use will be a number 2 pencil. It's called a 2B and a 4B. The designations on pencils with B and the letter H also have to do with hardness or softness. The higher the number with B, the softer the line, and therefore the darker the line. If you need to sharpen your pencil, you don't need anything fancy either, except perhaps just a little piece of sandpaper, unless you have a regular pencil sharpener, which would be fine. And for an eraser, if you run out of it on the pencil, sometimes just a traditional classroom eraser works. You can get something fancier in an art store called a kneaded eraser, which are very nice, but it's not necessary. So a simple number 2 pencil and a piece of computer paper, and you can draw what I'm going to draw. In the previous demo, I had shown the basics of drawing a cylinder in line, where we think of vertical edges and then 2 ellipses. One ellipse will be narrower than the other. That has to do with our eye level. When we're looking at something in perspective, if it's a circle, if we see it somewhat on its side, the closer it is to our eye level, the narrower the ellipse will be. So the top of the cylinder is closer to my eye level. The bottom of it is farther away from my eye level, so that's going to have a wider curvature. Of course, with a cylinder, we're not going to be seeing through it like it's made of glass, so I will just make the lower line of the ellipse. If you have a little trouble making that lower elliptical curve, you can actually draw the whole ellipse, but with the top line very light. And once you're satisfied with the symmetry of that ellipse, then just go ahead and erase the line. Now the principle of light and shadow, which is most important, is thinking of the direction or the directional flow of the light. So we'll draw this as though the light is coming in from the upper left side. This will explain what I'm about to do with shading. The light coming in from the left, from the upper left, will create what we call a form shadow all along the right side of the cylinder. And it will also illuminate the top. These types of lines that I'm making now are called hatching lines. And when they cross over each other, they're called cross-hatching. This is the type of drawing that's been done for centuries. It's how you can use line to create a curving surface. You'll notice that along the right side of the drawing, I'm leaving a little bit of space which is lighter, which is not shaded. It's only shaded partially. Now I'm going to switch to a 4B pencil. What I've been using is a 2B, and a 2B is the traditional pencil that you can just buy in a store, which would be in school supplies. When you go for something like a 4B pencil, that's where you have to go for art supplies. One thing I'd like to point out is this is a very gradual layering process, and if you feel you've made a mistake, it's okay to erase. In fact, I'm going to use the eraser as a drawing tool. I'm softening and evening out this edge to create what is called a gradation. And I'm deliberately using my finger. You can also use another nice household item, a piece of paper towel, to help blend this shadow. The curving quality of these lines has a special name among hatching lines. It's called cross-contour shading. Again, I'm going to make use of the eraser to clean up this edge and to help even create some negative lines, some light lines that overlap the darker lines. And then finally, I'll come back and smudge and smooth and blend both with my finger and with the paper towel. Trying to achieve a soft transition between the light side and the darker area. You can also start to blend that lighter area on the opposite side. This I might enhance slightly with some eraser lines, some of these negative lines. And you have to use some good, we'll say, common sense artistic judgment if things get too harsh or too dark or too light. Working with an eraser is almost like painting. With the flow of light, you'll also have, when an object is being illuminated, a cast shadow. So that's when you have to think about how high or how low is the light source. I'll go back to the lighter line, the 2B line, and using more horizontal lines or lines that are close to the horizontal, I'll create a simple cast shadow on this surface. One thing to remember is that the lines of a cast shadow will be darker and sharper when they're closer into the object. Keeping them somewhat horizontal helps to emphasize that this is a flat horizontal surface that the object is resting on. Of course, what I've drawn is simply an imaginary cylinder. I'm imagining a cylinder, a white cylinder, on a tabletop without any other distractions. One last thing, I'd like to define some of these terms, some of these things that I've been talking about. So I will label them. This is the light region. This entire shaded area is called the form shadow. This darker shadow, very important, this darker shadow within the form shadow is called a core shadow. Drawing a core shadow on a curving surface like a cylinder or a cone is very important to give the feeling of three-dimensionality. What distinguishes that core shadow is this little area of light that we've been working on, and that is simply reflected light. And finally, that's our cast shadow. One last thing that I'm not going to draw, but I'll leave you with for some fun. If you chose, without labeling, to create a frame around your cylinder, so you could create a composition, you could shade behind it as if you could see the tabletop edge and make it dark behind it. And that would give it even more of a dramatic quality. Thank you.